A storm rips the roof off a shed with the owner still on top of it. Besides a couple of bruises, he was completely fine.
A man's entire roof was torn off in a single gust. But what stunned neighbors most was that it landed upright, perfectly intact, 2 houses down. It was like a hat blown off someone's head, one witness said. No one was hurt, though the home is now considered structurally unsafe. Insurance adjusters called it an extremely rare wind pattern event. The homeowner joked, "If anyone needs a roof, I've got a spare." After the storm passed, silence fell so suddenly it felt wrong. Everything that once made sound, birds, cars, wind chimes, was gone or broken. James stood barefoot in the wet grass, staring at the sky. His house had lost half its roof, and a pine tree lay across his porch. But all he could think about was how quiet the world had become. It felt like the wind stole the noise, he later told a neighbor. That night, he slept on a mattress in the garage, listening for anything to return. During peak gusts, Harold Grant stepped outside to check on his generator and was lifted off his feet by hurricane winds. He landed 30 feet away in a muddy ditch, stunned but alive. It felt like a hand just picked me up and dropped me, he said. He suffered bruises and a fractured wrist, but managed to crawl back inside his home before the next wave of wind hit. Emergency crews later found trees snapped like twigs in his yard. "I'll never take wind warnings lightly again," Grant said from his hospital bed, smiling weakly. I was holding a mug of coffee when it happened. 1 second, the porch was there, the swing, the plants, the little welcome mat. The next, it lifted like a magic carpet and vanished into the sky. I didn't scream. I just stood there with the door open and wind roaring like a jet engine. That porch had been there since '89. My daughter took her prom pictures on it. My dog gave birth under it, and now it's gone. I found the swing 2 blocks away, still swaying. Everything else? Somewhere in Kansas, maybe. After the storm cleared, dozens of residents posted photos of found items to help neighbors reconnect with lost property. One family was shocked to see their trampoline wedged high in a pine tree 2 streets over, despite having tied it down. "It looked like a nest for giant birds," the father said. The trampoline frame was twisted, but mostly intact. With help from a tree service, they managed to recover it. "Next time," he laughed, "I'm chaining it to the car." Officials continue to warn that unsecured backyard items can become deadly projectiles in hurricane winds. A giant inflatable gorilla, once perched above a used car lot, was spotted drifting high above rural farmland after being snatched by hurricane winds. Witnesses reported seeing the 30-foot figure tumbling through the sky, like a flying bear doing flips. It eventually landed in a tree nearly 12 miles away, startling a herd of cattle. No one was injured, but videos of the airborne mascot have gone viral. "He was our landmark," said the dealership owner. "Now he's a legend." Officials reminded business owners to deflate outdoor inflatables before storms. After the hurricane and widespread flooding along the southern coast, rescue teams found 17-year-old Lucas Reyes floating alone through a submerged neighborhood, clinging to the door of a refrigerator. His family's trailer had been swept away overnight. Using jumper cables, Reyes tied himself to the door and drifted for 16 hours through dark, debris-filled waters. "I just kept thinking I had to stay awake," he told medics. Cold, dehydrated, and covered in cuts, he was taken to a local hospital and is expected to recover fully. Emergency officials called his survival remarkable and credited his quick thinking under pressure. As students and staff were being evacuated from the local high school, a massive gust tore off the gymnasium roof, sending metal panels flying across the parking lot. Surveillance footage shows teachers herding children out just moments before collapse. "We had 20 seconds, maybe less," said Principal Harris. No one was injured, though several cars were crushed by falling debris. Officials say the storm's wind speeds exceeded 120 miles per hour. The gym, built in the 1960s, was not rated for such conditions. Classes remained suspended. "We were lucky," Harris added. "That wind came for blood." An old man stood in the ruins of his workshop, running his hands over rusted tools he'd once polished every week. The wind had knocked down one wall, but left the other three standing, like a set on a stage. He didn't speak much as neighbors offered help. Instead, he swept sawdust from the floor, straightened a stool, and set a bent hammer carefully on the bench. "It's not gone," he finally said. "Just quieter now." A 30-foot metal billboard was torn from its supports and hurled through the second-story window of a downtown apartment complex. Miraculously, no one was in the room when it hit. The wind-carried structure demolished furniture, shattered glass, and embedded part of itself into the opposite wall. "It sounded like a bomb went off," said a neighbor. Fire officials said if the impact had happened an hour earlier, during a birthday party in the same unit, there would have been fatalities. The billboard's remains were later found 4 blocks away. A pastor live-streamed prayers throughout the hurricane using backup battery packs. Hundreds tuned in from darkened homes and flooded shelters. "It kept us connected," one viewer wrote. "I couldn't see the sky, but I could hear faith." The stream ran 14 hours without pause. A firefighter swam across a flooded intersection carrying a life vest in his teeth. Inside the stranded SUV was a woman 9 months pregnant. Contractions already started. With help from neighbors, she was floated on an air mattress to dry ground, then rushed to a hospital. Her baby was born 2 hours later, healthy and strong. "He came into the world like a rescue mission," the father said. An estimated 12 million tons of debris now cover the affected coastal region. Everything from drywall to rooftops to boats thrown inland lies in chaotic piles across roads and lawns. Landfills are overwhelmed. Officials plan to open temporary dump sites and have called in National Guard units to assist with logistics. Cleanup costs could exceed $500 million. The storm was an hour long. The cleanup may take a year, said a federal disaster response coordinator. When the hurricane hit, 16-year-old Brianna lost nearly everything. Her family's home was badly damaged, and most of their belongings vanished in the wind. But 3 days later, a neighbor found her bright blue prom dress tangled in a tree 3 miles away, still intact. "It sounds silly," she said, but it was the one thing that felt normal. Volunteers cleaned and restored it. Local businesses are now planning a community prom for displaced teens. "After everything we've lost," Brianna said, "this one dress being found made it feel like hope's still out there." In the rural outskirts of the county, 2 massive wind turbine blades snapped mid-storm, scattering fiberglass across nearby fields. Residents say the sound was like cannon fire. One farmer found a 12-foot shard embedded in his barn. "It missed the cows by inches," he said. The turbines, rated for high winds, weren't meant to withstand the recorded 140 miles per hour gusts. No injuries were reported, but the incident reignited debate about wind energy infrastructure in hurricane-prone areas. Engineers have been dispatched to assess the remaining turbines for structural weakness. The downtown business district was left in ruins after sustained winds sheared off signage, shattered storefronts, and caused partial collapses in 4 commercial buildings. The city estimates more than $70 million in damage to infrastructure alone. Crews are still working to clear glass and metal from the main thoroughfares. Of the 123 businesses surveyed post-storm, only 27 were able to reopen. Local officials have requested federal disaster relief as cleanup efforts intensify.
A backyard was left almost completely demolished.
When the winds
after
ripped the roof from their
destruction of
small
Hurricane
home,
Maria in
Ana
Puerto
Martinez
Rico.
had only seconds to react. She threw a mattress over her 2 young sons and laid across it as debris slammed into the walls and shattered glass flew. "It sounded like a freight train crashing through the sky," she said. For nearly an hour, she held still, praying the house wouldn't collapse. The family was later found shaken but unharmed. The house was destroyed, except for the bedroom where they hid. "She saved their lives," one responder said. "Pure instinct and courage." Three fishermen who stayed aboard their boat during the storm are missing. The vessel's GPS last pinged 2 miles offshore before signals were lost. Debris believed to be from the boat washed ashore Sunday. Search efforts continue by air and sea, though officials say conditions are challenging. The families are urging anyone with information to contact authorities. When the winds began tearing shingles from roofs, 68-year-old Lester Jennings ran outside to retrieve his garbage bins. A sudden gust knocked him off his feet and sent him sliding across his lawn. He grabbed onto the metal base of his mailbox and held on as the wind roared over him. "I thought I'd be blown into the next county," he said. When the storm passed, he was soaked, bruised, but alive. His mailbox was bent and his house badly damaged, but Jennings credits that metal post for saving his life. "Strongest thing I ever installed," he joked. The morning after, children wandered the neighborhood, pointing out what had changed. "That tree wasn't broken before," one said. "That trampoline wasn't there." They turned it into a game, spot the difference, but the parents watched in silence, tallying lost cars, collapsed roofs, shredded fences. One boy found a soggy storybook in a ditch and began reading aloud, sitting cross-legged on the wet sidewalk. Others joined him. For a moment, no one remembered the night's terror, only the sound of a child's voice trying to bring a story back to life. During the worst hours of the storm, volunteer firefighter Dana Price made solo trips by boat into flooded neighborhoods, rescuing 11 people, including a bedridden woman and 3 small children. With official resources overwhelmed, Price launched her own kayak from the fire station and worked through the night. "I just couldn't sit there and wait," she said. Battling wind, darkness, and floating wreckage, she pulled one family from a rooftop using bed sheets as rope. Residents are calling her a hero. "She didn't hesitate," one survivor said. "She saved us when no one else could get through." More than 800 homes were damaged or destroyed across the 3-county region after the storm's landfall. Preliminary aerial surveys revealed entire neighborhoods with only concrete slabs remaining. Emergency services reported over 1,200 calls in the first 12 hours. Winds exceeding 130 miles per hour tore roofs from apartment buildings and scattered insulation across highways. Officials estimate it will take at least 6 months to restore power fully. "This is the worst structural damage we've seen in decades," said the regional director of emergency management. When the hurricane hit, 74-year-old Tom Delaney refused to leave his hilltop cabin. He reinforced the windows, tied himself to a structural beam with old climbing rope, and waited. Outside, winds tore shingles and trees from the ground. Inside, the house trembled, but held. It was like standing in the path of a train for 5 hours, he said. When the storm passed, neighbors found him covered in dust, sipping cold coffee, and still strapped in. Stubborn doesn't begin to cover it, his daughter joked. Officials warn others not to follow his example, despite the outcome. Responders searching a flooded street found a 2-year-old girl sitting on a floating couch, soaked but alive, her arms wrapped tightly around the family dog. No adults were nearby. The home had been destroyed hours earlier, and it's believed the rising water lifted the furniture to safety. The dog, a Labrador mix, reportedly barked until rescuers approached. Both were taken to a shelter, where the girl was quickly reunited with relatives. "We don't know how they survived," one firefighter said, but that dog never left her side. Authorities are calling it a small miracle amid widespread devastation. A mother and her 3 children drove nearly 400 miles over 2 days, sleeping in the car and fueling only where possible. Every hotel along the route was full. They finally found shelter in a church gymnasium converted to emergency housing. "We packed for a weekend, not for losing our home," she said. The Red Cross registered over 10,000 evacuees in the region by the end of the week. The wind came so suddenly that Ella barely had time to grab her backpack. She ducked into a drainage culvert just as debris started flying past like shrapnel. For nearly 30 minutes, she lay curled in mud, listening to trees snap and metal twist. When it ended, she climbed out to find her street unrecognizable, cars flipped, roofs gone. But the culvert had protected her completely. Later, a rescuer said it was the smartest dumb luck he'd seen all week. Inmates from the county jail were evacuated by armored bus, hands zip-tied, escorted by National Guard. A low-lying floodplain threatened the facility, and officials moved over 140 prisoners to a high-security unit inland. It was a quiet, tense transfer. "We've never evacuated our jail before," said the sheriff. Power was lost 2 hours later, and parts of the jail were knee-deep in water by morning. After the storm, a cross made of driftwood was discovered lodged upright in a sand dune where dozens had sought shelter. Locals have since preserved it as a symbol. "It felt like he marked the place where we were saved," said one evacuee. "We'll never move it." An entire